The UK government requires us to think about our carbon emissions, to be part of the Climate Change Act and do our bit towards carbon emissions reductions of 80% to 2050.
We need to be sure that we have designed holistically. Starting from the centre, it's looking at the whole building physics, for instance, not just the lighting, the heating, the ventilation, all as separate issues. It's looking at it all as one thing.
The Atkins design team for a new pier at Gatwick Airport decided to embed low carbon design from the very outset. We looked at every element of that design and tested to see how we could make it more low carbon.
When they looked at the runway resurfacing, they again looked at it as a holistic project. So not just look at the resurfacing, let's look at the lighting at the same time. So they renewed all the lighting with LED, so the edge lighting, the centerline lighting, the touchdown areas, all LED now.
We looked at the materials choices, we looked at the passenger experience, we looked at the scale of the building, we looked at the facade performance to keep the daylight in and keep the solar gains out. And we optimised every element, making conscious decisions about how much carbon was going to be in the building. Airports have this very peaky use profile. It's kind of all or nothing. And the trick for us as designers is to make sure that we can turn them back, turn them off when they're not in use. The carbon footprint tells us that the vast majority of the carbon emissions are associated with that aircraft movement from landing to terminal. How can we reduce that? Turn off those engines, minimise that fuel consumption.
Many of the airport assets are life expired, and when we're replacing them, we're looking not just at replacing them with things of the lowest capital cost, but actually replacing with assets which have their whole life cost worked out. Quite often, something that actually is slightly more capital intensive is then very much more operationally cheaper.
If we make the right conscious decisions when we master plan them, we can embed low carbon right into the buildings, into the facilities from day one. Low carbon buildings don't necessarily cost more, and especially when we consider the long-term running costs and life cycle costs of a design, it's consistently better value and in many cases cheaper.
Through the British Aviation Group, we're building a network of companies who have low carbon at the heart of their design as well, so that actually the finished product that we deliver from early design right until completion and operation is actually sustainable, has low carbon, and is a solution that will last for the future.
Nobody requires us to look at embodied carbon in our designs, but we consistently see that if we do use embodied carbon as a metric in the design process, the buildings become simpler, easier to construct, cheaper in many instances, and much more sustainable and low carbon.